Good evening and welcome to the City of Burbank Infrastructure Oversight Board meeting, February 22nd, 2024. Would everyone join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's do roll call.
Maria Coronado,
Present.
Armin Avazian,
Present.
Linda Besson,
Present.
Jean Schanberger,
Here.
Colin Hoffmeister,
Here.
Shant Kodavardian,
Here.
Shane Weber.
Here.
Do we have any announcements?
Madam Chair, no announcements from staff.
Thank you. Anyone for public comment?
We have one public comment, David Donahue, regarding Metrobus BRT.
Thank you.
All right, reset the minutes. Commissioners, my name is David Donahue. I'm the current president of Vision Burbank. We organized several years ago because of what Metro was planning with their bus rapid transit through the city of Burbank to make a dedicated lane and give it exclusively to the bus rapid transit bus system. We protested to the council and we were successful in getting the council to be able to advocate for mixed flow. The item is coming up March 26th in front of the council, where the cooperation agreement from David Kriski's office will be presented to them. It is a position of former Mayor Anthony, and I do believe the majority of the council members, that they will vote to push back to David Kriski the ordinance, the cooperation agreement, to include side running and curbside. If you're not familiar with those terms, I highly suggest you become familiar with them. Most people are not. The Infrastructure Oversight Commission, I know traffic is in your domain. It may not be specifically as specific as the Transportation Commission, but it is something that is probably one of the most critical aspects that could affect Burbank that I've seen ever because of what it'll do. I am in communication with cities and other areas around Los Angeles who have fought against this massive change to a community. And this is something I urge you, that if the opportunity presents, to ask for a presentation from staff so that you yourselves, if under your jurisdiction, would be able to offer an opinion. And I see that Mr. Kriski is here, so that I welcome his attendance. If you have any questions, he is the subject matter expert. Thank you very much for your time and for your service to Burbank.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone have a response or? All right. Moving on to consent calendar, we have the approval of minutes of the meeting held January 25th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Maria Coronado,
Yes.
Armin Avazian,
I'll abstain.
Linda Besson,
Yes.
Jean Schanberger,
Yes.
Colin Hoffmeister,
Yes.
Shant Kodavardian,
Yes.
Shane Weber.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that. Moving on to reports to the board. Mr. Berkman.
Yes, Madam Chair and board members, we're here to review current board member attendance records in anticipation of a report to council through the clerk's office. So I'm going to just provide a brief summary of our code section 2-1-403, which established our boards, commissions, and committees. When it comes to absences, in the event a member of a board, commission, or committee is absent for 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings of the board, commission, or committee to which he or she has been appointed, or who fails to attend at least 75% of the regularly scheduled meetings during a 12-month period, which commences on the date of the appointment of the individual member to office. The attendance record of such member shall be reviewed by the board, commission, or committee to which the member was appointed. The board, commission, or committee shall consider the reasons for the absences with the member and make a determination whether the absences should be excused or unexcused by the city council. The report and recommendation shall be transmitted to the city clerk, who shall agendize the matter for city council's consideration. The city council shall take appropriate action, including but not limited to excusing the absences, removing the member, or such other action as the council deems appropriate. Specifically tonight, for the board's consideration, in a review of attendance records, our member Cotoveridian has missed the past 3 consecutive meetings, including January. So we, in a typical process, allow the member to discuss the reasons for the absences for the board's consideration. I wanted to point out, we want to make sure if there's any discussions of the reasons for the absences, we are employees, so there's no HIPAA, there's no details of medical or any things like that that should be disclosed, but general. So in this case, Madam Chair, we would start with Mr. Cotoveridian discussing with the board the reasons for those 3 absences.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to apologize for my attendance record. I was actually not aware of that particular rule, even though it wouldn't, I would have tried to be here last time, but I just didn't know. I work at a global international law firm, one of the biggest law firms in the world, and I was recently promoted to be a partner in the law firm about 4 months ago. So it's been incredibly hectic, and I've had to travel around the country to our various offices, which has contributed to my lack of available time. So that has been a major part of the reason why I wasn't able to attend.
Any comments from board members?
Congratulations on your promotion. Do you feel that going forward that you will have the availability to attend the IOB meetings on a regular basis?
Thank you for asking that question. I forgot to say, now that I have been promoted and stabilized, I predict that my schedule will stabilize and I will be able to continue my duties.
Any further comment? Well, I will also congratulate you. I know sometimes life gets pretty busy. I have a quick question, though. If one of us were out of town, would there be an opportunity for us to attend via Zoom?
No long, Zoom or virtual meetings are no longer available. That's per city council direction throughout for the commissions, committees, and boards.
Okay. Well, hearing no further discussion, I guess I would say I recommend to the city council that these absences be excused, if I can do that.
Yes, Madam Chair, you can make that a motion, and we can carry it that way. And for the, to advise the board, the next step after this would be the chair would write a letter to the city council based on the discussions and the recommendation, and staff would work on with the city clerk to schedule that this item on the city council's agenda, and I would keep you apprised of when that date would be.
Thank you. So I make a motion that we recommend that the absences be excused.
And Chair, I just want to suggest that to that motion that they authorize you or a member of staff to make that report to the council.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
As part of that motion, I suggest that you add that either you or staff can finalize that recommendation in a report to council.
Yes, agreed. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Call for a vote?
Armin Avazian,
Yes.
Maria Coronado,
Yes.
Linda Besson,
Yes.
Jean Schanberger,
Yes.
Shane Weber,
Yes.
Colin Hoffmeister.
Yes.
All right, moving on to Capital Improvement Project Program Report from staff.
All right. Madam Chair and board members, welcome to what I've always said is our most important meeting of the year, when we seek to set up next fiscal year's capital improvement program in consideration primarily of the Measure P contribution to the program held in Fund 534. Every year, we seek to improve our program delivery, ensuring every project's scope, budget, and schedule are set as accurately as possible and delivered on time and within budget in consideration of all the funding sources available to us, as more importantly, the staff and consultant resources also available to us. We always seek to create and deliver what I say is an aggressive but achievable program. There is still a large backlog of work to be done, as you will see. Staff is proposing a CIP program for our new and ongoing projects in fiscal year 24-25 of totaling $33,712,391. Adding our continuing projects, which are active but not requesting any additional funding for fiscal year 24-25, that have an allocated budgeted amount of $72,312,854. The total fiscal year 24-25 CIP program has about $106 million worth of active design and construction activity staff from all departments is working on. So, especially for our new members, let me provide a quick overview of the process. To start, in December, Public Works requests all departments consider their current staff resources and workloads and review what's known as the unfunded needs list to see if projects should be submitted before creating and requesting new projects. Then, project sheets are created for all the new projects and ongoing projects which are requesting additional funding, or they are established, known multi-year projects that typically require their construction funds for this year, fiscal year 24-25. Once all the new and ongoing project sheets are received, we determine the amount of funding needed from Fund 534 in particular versus how much funding is available, as you will see in our Finance Director, Jennifer Becker's presentation coming up. The past 2 years, there were more funding requests than funding available. The IOB and staff created a prioritization methodology sheet to objectively score projects that was first put into use in fiscal year 22-23 program. And that's used to determine which projects should move forward and which would not, represented on the overall spreadsheet that you'll see soon by a red line. This year, staff put a very concerted effort to limit new projects, given the amount of continuing and ongoing projects that need to be completed, which resulted in allowing us to present the proposed CIP program with no red line, or you'll actually see the red line at the bottom of the sheet when I pull it up, and no projects below it, so everything that we are presenting to you can move forward without deliberation or talking about the scores. The Development Oversight Committee, or DOC, you might have heard me say that body, that's comprised of executive staff, and it's attended by department leadership and the project managers. They had no changes to staff's recommended program that you'll see tonight after their review at their February 5th meeting. This year, with 5 new board members, we thought it would be a good idea to also quickly review the continued projects, and that's a first, and I'll do that at the end. All the project managers or those who can answer questions about the specific projects are here, so if you want to ask any questions at any time as I go through the projects, feel free. I'll also pause for questions at the end of each section, after the new packet and then the ongoing packet, and then I'll continue into the continued projects. Also, a quick thing I'd like to do this year is directly say thank you personally and an appreciation for all the great work the project managers and support staff do to prepare and deliver our CIP program from all of our departments. And I gave them a little warning, but I wanted to go around the room and allow them to introduce themselves before we get started. So I have this microphone. You're all on the spot.
Hi, David Null, Senior Civil Engineer, Project Manager up at Public Works.
Dean Pearson, Public Works, Construction Superintendent.
Jackie Batena, Senior Analyst for Public Works.
Anna Hartunian, Associate Civil Engineer, Public Works.
Jose Rodriguez, Associate Civil Engineer for Public Works as well.
Good evening, Steve Walker, Assistant Public Works Director, Wastewater, which also includes stormwater quality.
Good evening, Artin Megardician, Principal Civil Engineer with Public Works Engineering.
Stephanie Cant, Senior Analyst supporting Public Works Field Services.
Good evening, Vicky Davtian with Public Works, Principal Traffic Engineer.
I put him on the spot. And Mr. Krisky's hiding over here, so I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hello, I'm David Krisky, Assistant Community Development Director for Transportation.
Well, thank you, everybody. And special thanks to Jackie Patena. We all couldn't have put this together without her. She herded all the cats, so thanks. Okay, so let's get started. I believe we have a screen share and a PowerPoint we can get started with. You'll probably recognize some of the ongoing and continued projects from the quarter 1, quarter 2 update from last month as well. So in the old days when this was happening, you can get a screenshot of, excuse us, technical difficulties. There we go. All right. So to start with our budget overview, I'd like to introduce our Finance Director, Jennifer Becker. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Berkman. Good evening, Chair Coronado and members of the IOB. I'm Jennifer Becker with the Financial Services Department. And as Mr. Berkman said, I'm here tonight to kick off the review of our proposed Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, budget. So I'm going to set the stage with a brief financial review of our Municipal Infrastructure Fund, as that is our primary unrestricted funding source for future capital projects. But we'll also take a look at the CIP budget in total, which proposes to allocate funding from a wide variety of funding sources available to the city for capital projects. Uh-oh. Thank you. So let's begin, as we do every year, with Burbank's infrastructure funding policy that was adopted in 2018 along with the passage of Measure P. So Measure P approved a general purpose transactions and use tax, which we refer to as the TUT, of 0.75% within the city of Burbank. Per the adopted funding policy, 50% of this revenue shall be dedicated directly towards citywide infrastructure repairs, maintenance, and improvements. Additionally, to avoid supplanting prior infrastructure funding with this new revenue stream, the policy dictates that the general fund continue a $4.7 million annual commitment as part of a maintenance of effort. Both the TUT and that maintenance of effort are deposited to our Municipal Infrastructure Fund, which you'll hear us refer to as Fund 534. And they are the main sources of revenue for that fund. Other Fund 534 revenues also include interest earned on any cash that's available in the fund, as well as the occasional one-time transfer for a specific project. The city includes an annual review of the Municipal Infrastructure Fund as part of our external audit procedures to ensure that we are maintaining compliance with that annual commitment to this funding policy. So that review was just completed by our certified audit partner of Lance, Soul, and Longhard, and they did report that we indeed complied with the policy as stated for the most recent closed fiscal year, which was fiscal year 2022-23. So let's take a look at our projected cash picture for the Municipal Infrastructure Fund. So we think about revenues like your monthly income. So these are dollars coming into your checking account, and budget appropriations as your monthly or annual expenses that you have going out. Well, your account is never completely at $0, right? There's always a little bit of leftover spending cash from the prior month or the prior year. So a governmental fund balance is kind of similar to that, but on a bigger scale. So where we see that projected year-end fund balance, that's kind of our available or projected leftover cash in the fund that we expect to have at the end of this year. And right now, we're expecting a year-end fund balance of just under $6.5 million for the current year. This assumes that both revenues and expenses come in as projected for the year. And given that our year isn't over yet, we won't know the actual number until we close our books in a few more months. So for fiscal year 24-25, we're projecting total revenues for Fund 534 of about $21.7 million. This includes the 50% Measure P allocation, the $4.7 million general fund contribution that I mentioned previously, and projected interest earnings based on current rates and available cash. Offsetting that, we are projecting an O&M budget of $5.2 million. O&M stands for operations and maintenance and includes annual expenses that are not capital in nature, such as building repairs and inspections, tree trimming, and general maintenance services such as plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. Additionally, we have our proposed capital plan of $16.7 million in $534 for fiscal year 24-25. And this is where we're going to focus the bulk of our attention this evening. So this leaves us with a projected fund balance at the end of fiscal year 24-25 of $6.4 million that will be available for future appropriations. I should note that this balance you see here before you does not include the $10 million that the City Council approved to set aside for the future Central Library and Civic Center project back in September of 2022. Okay, so now let's take a look at our total general city capital plan for fiscal year 24-25. I will note that you see the heading says non-utility infrastructure funding. Our utilities, which include BWP, electric and water, and the Public Works, sewer, and refuse funds, they fund their capital programs through the rates that they collect from city customers. And since those utilities are not eligible for the funding sources we're discussing here, their capital projects or their plans are not under the purview of this board. So taking a look at the pie chart on this slide, and you'll learn that I do love a good pie chart, we are proposing a total of $33.7 million in appropriations for our general city capital plan for 2024-25. The different colors on the chart represent the different categories of new and continuing projects we're looking to fund next year, with $12.1 million going towards city facilities, $8.3 million to our parks and recreation facilities, $11.3 million towards our street paving and sidewalk replacement program, and just under $2 million in traffic and pedestrian improvement projects. Now, it's important to note that while our Municipal Infrastructure Fund is a critical portion of the funding for our annual CIP budget, it's certainly not the only source of funding. Our 24-25 CIP plan proposes to utilize 12 different funding sources and set-asides to fund those $33.7 million in projects you see before you. Approximately 49%, or $16.7 million, will be funded by Fund 534, as I mentioned previously. Another 42% of the CIP is funded by a variety of restricted funding sources, such as our many transportation funds, development impact fees, Parks Measure A funding, and Art and Public Places funds. And 6% of our CIP is funded by grant funds, which you will learn is my favorite funding source because it's made up of other people's money. The city has a long-standing policy of trying to identify and use the most restrictive sources of funding first for projects that qualify in order to preserve the maximum amount of unrestricted funding for projects that otherwise would not have a dedicated funding source. So now, before I turn the presentation back over to Mr. Berkman to discuss those projects, does anybody have any questions for me on our CIP funding sources or our city funding in general?
I have two questions.
Sure.
That I just want to understand for my own benefit. When we go back on the slides for 2024-2025 projected revenue, it's 21.7 million, right?
Right.
Does that mean that 4.7 of that is general fund dedication, And the remainder is TUP?
Yes, most of that is the majority is the TUT. You have the $4.7 million maintenance of effort, and there's going to be a little bit in there just for projected interest that we earn on cash that's sitting in the fund. So those are basically the three revenue sources for there.
Got it. And when it says proposed capital projects, 16.6 million, and the next page says 33.7 million?
That's right.
How are those related?
So the 16 million is the portion of the capital projects that are funded by the infrastructure fund, but we have lots of other funding sources that we use to fund capital projects. So about half of it comes from Fund 534. The rest comes from all of those other funding sources, and you'll see that as we go through the projects tonight. For example, we get gas tax money from the state gas tax that can only be used for roads. Well, we want to use that first, right, because it's not eligible for some of the other projects that we want to use. So we do try to use all of those restricted funding sources we can, and then kind of fill the rest with the municipal infrastructure funds as we need it, because that funding is less restrictive than some of those others.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all that information. My question is in regard to the projected year-end fund balance at the end. How often is there a fund balance left over at the end of the fiscal years of these funds, and usually what is the range of that balance that carries forward?
I'd say we've pretty much been consistent between 6 or 7 million at the end of the year. So this is consistent with prior years. You, of course, always want to have a little bit of fund balance or cushion in case something unexpected come up or there's some kind of emergency repair or capital project. We would never want to spend a fund down to zero. So 6%, given the fund gets about 21 million a year, is a pretty healthy fund balance, right? Because proportionally, it's about 30% of your total revenues. So we feel pretty comfortable with that fund balance. Of course, it's always available if we were to want to add additional projects, but it's also, a good idea to just leave some for emergencies and not expend, 100% of your dollars.
Thank you.
If you go to the slide that has the RMRA and gas tax, the estimated gas tax is about $2.9 million. The budget, we are budgeting for 1.9. Is there a reason we are not budgeting less than our estimate?
Yes. So I see the 1.9 on the state gas tax fund. So that's the portion of the gas tax fund that we're budgeting for capital projects. These funds also fund other things like staffing, or it depends on the fund, but they have other expenses too that are non-capital in nature. So this would be the portion of the gas tax funds that we are planning to earmark for, specifically for capital for next year. And you'll see those vary from year to year depending on availability. So in some years we might have cash left over from the prior year, and then we'll try to appropriate that and do extra street paving if we can. And then other years, we're on a more tighter budget and we may use less gas tax money depending on if we had like a bigger year the year before. So those can vary from year to year. Yes.
I had a question also, sort of comparison to prior years in that restricted funds list. The development impact fees of about $3.1 million. Is that typical or higher or lower than historical?
That's another one that's going to vary quite a bit from year to year because there are multiple categories within those development impact fees. So some of them are dedicated to parks, some of them are dedicated to transportation programs. So oftentimes you may not have a project at all for a couple years, and then you collect those revenues and then you appropriate for a big time project. So anything that's capital in nature, you're really going to vary from year to year. So I wouldn't want to say it's typical for a year, but and Mr. Kriske can correct me if I'm wrong, but we typically have maybe one or two projects in development impact fees every year. The amounts may vary. And sometimes we use that to match transportation grant funds that we get as well. So it's a good source of matching funds for grants.
I like your comment about the the grant funds being other people's money. Is there an initiative or a goal to increase that from the 6% to a higher amount? And if you do that, does that affect any other budgets? Is there kind of a magic number or percent?
So yes, it's always our goal to bring in as much grant funding as we possibly can, and especially our transportation group and our parks group is very active in seeking out grants for specific projects. It doesn't necessarily change the amount we budget in other projects because those grants are usually for something specific. So we don't have as much flexibility with a grant to kind of utilize it for whatever we like. It really has to have kind of a targeted purpose. So we do like to bring those in. We do like to leverage the other funds we have as like a matching source for a grant because, you know, to the extent we could use that money effectively to, you know, match other people's money. As we say, that's always a good thing. But it doesn't necessarily change our totals, or change the other projects. But yes, we do, I think, actively seek out grants as much as we possibly can. And city's been pretty effective in that in previous years.
And Board Member Hofmeister, I'll add for the board, the amount of grant money expenditures that this board would see year to year does vary, and it typically is higher when we have grant funds for construction, because that's typically where we want to go. That's the greatest value, because we set the table, say with matching funds in our design processes, and then once we have the construction, we really have what everybody knows is like shovel-ready projects, so we can get a strong grant application out there for construction. And I believe last year the budget was about 20% of grant funding. So we're probably in a design planning year looking at grants, and then hopefully we acquire grant monies for the construction coming up.
But I should point out, I mean, in the prior year, we were extremely successful with grants, right? Securing the $10 million for the future Central Library and Civic Center project, and I believe $1 million for the future of McCambridge Pools. So last year was an exceptional year as well. So, but we'll continue to look for those big dollar items.
All right, we'll continue on. I believe we have a sheet to share. Okay, so thank you, Ms. Becker, for that information. The follow-up we like to present for the board is a summary sheet of the infrastructure funding resources for the upcoming fiscal year, the estimates. And really what this is a kind of a deeper dive, a detailed breakdown into the financial PowerPoint you just saw. All these numbers, really what I'm looking at is the red column to the right, where we have our proposed infrastructure spending for the coming fiscal year. And those dollar amounts are the dollar amounts you will see in the project sheets coming up. Did we have the prioritization sheet? I just want to touch upon that. Thanks. So I just wanted to go through, even though it wasn't necessary this year to score the projects, because as we were saying, we have funding surplus. We didn't have to cut any projects out that departments proposed. So I wanted to just go over the sheet that we created with the IOB. This was established in fiscal year 22-23, so this would be our third fiscal year that we'd be using it. No, it was, I get it. So as it's pulled up, we created this with 5 scoring categories. They're health and safety, system condition, joint agreement or legal requirement, thank you, the coordination opportunity, and community interest. So to kind of run through it, the health and safety category, you can see the 4 levels of catastrophic impact, significant possibility, moderate possibility, or minimal possibility of personal injury or property damage. So we have points scored that way. Obviously, the catastrophic impact is we have to do this now, so it's going to get some very significant points out of a total possible score of 50. The system condition, we are looking at what type of flaws or issues are we dealing with for our sidewalks, streets, storm drains, for example, or of course our buildings. We have a serious flaw that we have to correct now. Obviously, that's something we have to get into this program. We have extending the useful life for about half the points. And then we're looking at a more heavy maintenance type of project where it's going to maintain the useful life. Our joint agreement and legal requirement, it's either a yes or no question. Are we mandated in some way to do this? The coordination opportunity, can we combine this with another project to generate efficiencies in labor or time and materials? And as you see, it's significant or moderate or minimal savings, or it's just there's no coordination. It's a kind of an individual standalone project. So our point system is done that way. And community interest is kind of the catch-all for the value of the project in the community's eyes. The community's eyes includes, typically if city council has said this is something we want, that gets the full 10 points. A commission, committee, or this board, somewhere around at the 7, 8 points. And then there are other facets of community input and public outreach and things that staff does that contribute to those points also. So I wanted to introduce that to you, even though we fortunately don't have to use it this year. So we have always tried to figure out how we are going to get this on the screen so people could see it, and we still don't know how, but hopefully you have it in front of you. This first is our proposed new projects. So your first part of your project sheets, which are the 8.5 by 11 sheets that have individual projects, they're mostly yellow, and they have the project descriptions and justifications and the financial plan. So I will start with those and go down the list. They should be in order in your packet. And our first project for the upcoming fiscal year, our annual sidewalk rehabilitation project. And it's intended to always be ahead of our annual residential pavement rehabilitation project, and we complete the concrete work before we do the paving of the roadways. The thing to note about this project with its $2.3 million budget is, you see it's funded with Measure M and the gas tax, and we bumped this project up from $1.5 million to the $2.3 million, and a lot of that has to do with the inflationary impacts that everybody knows about, and concrete being an energy-dependent product. So we're going to have the ability to get some, make sure our estimates are in line and make sure the funding's available. Design will take place once we start the fiscal year in July, and we anticipate construction from February to June of 2025. Yes, Ms. Besson.
Thank you. I'm just curious. This is classified as a new project. Has there been prior work on sidewalks, or is this new meaning this particular section of sidewalk, or how does that classified?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That allows me to go back. You'll notice the top 4 projects on this proposed new project sheet, and the new projects are always funding, new funded projects. These were classified, we renamed these. So every fiscal year, we have the annual sidewalk and the annual residential pavement, the annual arterial pavement, and our annual facilities improvement projects. So we do those every year. They're always a top priority, and it was a big part of why Measure P is here. So the reason they're a new project, we got rid of a term called programmatic. And what was happening with us, we were creating carryovers of projects because it was the programmatic annual residential project. So the monies would just carry over. Well, that's not good for project manager accountability and public transparency. We want to create a scope and a budget and a schedule for every individual project, even if we know we're doing it multiple years, as long as this, we know that scope is defined and we have sections that we move around the city for these, except for the buildings, of course, we have our different delivery plan for that. But this is what we were doing this fiscal year, and we close out the books, and I know Ms. Becker is a big fan of this because it helps us with our auditing and our files to make sure we close it out, and we return the funding to the funding source, that fund, at the end of the project. So that's why, though it's a new project, it is something we do every year, these top 4, and they're always, if we were in this situation where we had a prioritization, we had to look at these are always going to be the top scores, and if the scores were in here, they would be grayed out, because these are something we have to do. So hope that answered the question. So moving on from the sidewalks, similarly, we can go through these next few. Next, we have our residential pavement rehabilitation program for 24-25. Multiple funding sources with M and our 534, the Municipal Infrastructure Fund. Road maintenance and rehabilitation, the RMRA, also known as what's come under SB1, and then our gas tax. We have increased this funding amount to $6 million total from $5 million. Similarly, for deal with the inflationary impacts, our project manager, Artin Megardician, he certainly saw this. We saw this with our bids that came in. Asphalt tonnage was very high, went through a big sharp increase. So we want to make sure we capture that. And the thing I'll point out about the pavements, residential, and the next one for the arterial, you see it's really a 5-year program. It is the same amount of money. Next year, you might recall last month we talked about we're going to complete a new project management, pavement management report. So we're going to see what the overall citywide condition of our pavement is, and then we'll see how much we have to do and how we need to do it, and tighten those numbers up for another 5-year plan throughout the city. As I mentioned, the next one is the arterial pavement. The arterial roadways are our major roadways, 2 to 6 lanes in our city. And we increased that budget from previous years of $1.6 million to now $3 million. And we will also keep an eye on what we need to do for our arterials with that pavement management report. But we've really made some great strides with our pavement, our citywide pavement condition with our Measure P funding, and certainly using our restricted funds first. And we expect to be over 70 with a goal of our pavement condition index as its own to get the 73. The sheets note it as 2030, 31, but Artin knows I expect that in like 2 years. All right, next, led by our project manager, Dean Pearson, we have an annual facility small capital improvement. And this is a planned and unplanned replacement and modernizations for our building systems and building components. This does not include general maintenance and small repairs. It's kind of that tweener spot of something in the range of like a $50,000 to before we have to go to council for a bid award of $200,000. So these are ongoing projects, lots of planned work, but also with our older buildings now in a 100-plus-year-old city, there are definitely unplanned things that we have to tend to as well. And I think I mentioned, so this is an annual amount that hasn't changed. It's been $1.625 million each year. I believe I mentioned it last month, we have a citywide facility condition assessment that's being done on all 1.3 million square feet of our buildings in the city, and that's going to create a 20-year capital improvement plan for our buildings, and we look forward to bringing that to you. We expect that to be done in, I was going to say June. He said March. Dean's on record as saying June. All right. This fiscal year, we'll go with that. I know we're close.
Just a question.
Yes, please.
Any fund balance remaining from the past years, or, I mean, the current fiscal year, that's gonna be returned to the fund source? Or we are all exhausting?
Yes. Every project that when it's closed out, we do, Ms. Becker can correct me if I'm wrong, at least an annual review with all the project managers and close out the projects and return the remaining funds to their fund source.
And do we know how much is that?
Not offhand.
Yeah, it depend on the individual projects, right? And how much leftover funding that they have after the project is complete. Those drop back into the fund balance, and then, which is typical, we'll end up having a little bit bigger fund balance than we projected this time, because not every project will use every single dollar of appropriation.
But that does, what we see tonight with Ms. Becker's report, it does capture the current situation of the funds that have been returned to their funding sources and what we use to create this program.
Right, from last year's budget. We don't know how much of this year's projects will return to fund balance, so we're estimating, or we do our projections assuming that 100% of dollars budgeted will be spent and 100% of projected revenues will be received. Of course, actual results may vary, as they say.
Thank you for the question. The next three are new projects for the city attorney's office. The first one is a reconfiguration. We need to create some more private offices and work spaces for increasing staff. And, I wanted to note, the city attorney's office is really a key partner in our project delivery. They're always involved in all the purchase orders and contracts and everything that we do to get work done. So they're always appreciated, so we like doing work for them as well. Then for their security, the next one, they need some new security glass to reach the full ceiling height for their front office employees to ensure their safety. Obviously, there are certain members of the public that can be not happy maybe with the cases against them, or things that we want to make sure we prevent and keep everybody safe. So that's coming up, and expect to finish that in September.
Yeah, the Burbank City Attorney's Office is one of the few city attorney's offices in the state that actually prosecutes misdemeanors. So that's a little different from some of the other states that only do civil work. We actually have to deal with some people that potentially are being prosecuted. So that's the reason for the need for security.
As spoken from senior city attorney himself, so thank you. And a vault door installation is the next one, and this is the storage vault's located in the closed session, the city council closed session conference room, and there's no direct access to the city attorney's office. So in order to a lot of records and the abilities to access those records without disrupting meetings in the conference room, the cost you see also includes, there's some very thick concrete walls, so there's some work to be done, and Public Works will lead that effort and look to get that done in October of '24.
I just have a quick question on that one. Is that vault for legal files and paperwork? Do we know?
Mr. Kane, would you like to answer that?
I believe so, but sometimes it's unclear just by looking at it. There's just a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah. I guess I would just wonder if the city considered using like Iron Mountain and these service providers that provide off-site document storage. Just wondering whether that was considered.
I'm not sure. I mean, these policies kind of develop over time, and I'm sure it's part of the next IT phase of projects on the list, but not currently.
Board Member Cotavarian, I think the answer overall for the city is yes, we do use off-site storage, and check back with staff. Right. We do, and we always have to make sure, of course, we're in compliance with state record-keeping laws, and our city clerks are very much on top of that, and us to make sure we were doing destruction of records and keeping records accurately. So these are, I would guess, certainly records they need to have on hand and on site and need to be secure, so they wanted to make sure that vault door was upgraded, and from a logistics standpoint, people don't have to cross through a meeting room. That's basically where this came from.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, this is a interesting one, a good one for the city. We are creating a new emergency operations center at City Hall. And the fire department actually secured a FEMA mitigation grant in the amount of $1,235,750. So we're going to renovate the City Hall basement and construct this new EOC. And from a funding standpoint, you'll see the Municipal Infrastructure Fund, Fund 534, spread over 2 years. We have a 25% match that's required of $411,917. So we have a EOC now, fully functional. It's at the fire training facility, but it is old and outdated. So we're looking to relocate that within this civic center block to provide a more centralized and effective location, that being City Hall. So this is a big effort, and you know, I've made note in here that we'll start design in this coming fiscal year, and it's a really tight deadline, but FEMA itself basically already delayed our project by 8 months for their processing, so we're gonna certainly ask for an extension. We expect to get that, but for now, the completion date is February 2026. So we'll keep you
I have a
apprised.
question. I just want to go on the record saying that when that's completed, we would love a tour.
Oh, yes, would be happy to do that. I'm sure the fire chief would love to as well. Thank you. In our PD headquarters across the street, the forensic services area needs a modernization for really what is a 25-year-old forensic work area. You know, the operational standards and requirements, they're just not currently applicable. So they wanted to get this project in here and going. So planning and design, we will start in the next fiscal year and expect to complete that in fiscal year 25, 26. So this sheet needs to be updated because we're showing kind of a duplicative. Construction is estimated to start, but also finish. I don't think that's right. We'll correct that because the completion date is noted as actually June 2027. So Mr. Pearson, we can work with PD on that and slide probably, I would think, half of that into 26, 27. So we'll modify that, and you will see that at your next meeting in March.
Question. There is a forecast of 1.6 million for 25-26. Where is this fund source programmed to be used from?
That will be for your consideration at this time in a year. So it's a good point to say, one of the things that we need to do to get better at project delivery is to finish what we started. So we really, you heard me say that in the beginning, to make sure we did not add too many new projects given the workload that we already have to do. And it totals, you know, $106 million of budgeted work. However, once we start a project, we have to finish it. And we need to fund these projects and keep them going. Now, of course, as we talked about earlier, I'm sure PD would be looking at grant funds as we continue to design this and try and fund this with, we all love the phrase, other people's money, but that funding will be before you. Obviously, I don't believe it's going to be 1.7 million. It'll be spread out over a couple of years, but it is a significant investment. But with a, you know, we think about police department and how critical forensics is, and if we have a facility that's 25 years old, this is going to be extremely helpful for them to fight crime and solve crime for our community. Like the CAO's office, CDD has kind of run out of space for all the work they need to do here in our community services building. Looking to split one office into two offices, and that also involves, everybody thinks office work is pretty simple, but we have to consider fire safety, fire sprinklers, ceiling lights, probably HVAC. So it's a little bit of work that you see here. This is within the transportation division, and this is specifically within the parking management staff. So this is here in the second floor. Another big project for us is our McCambridge pool replacement. And you'll see the forecast. This is going out through fiscal year 26-27. We can correct the project status and the forecasted completion date because we have noted 24-25 and finishing in 25. So we'll fix that for next meeting. But this is going to provide a new lap swim pool, water slides and play features, a new pool deck, equipment room, and also locker room renovations and staff offices. This is the one we mentioned that we had received a $1.5 million grant, and I'd be remiss right now if I looked over to my right. I didn't give the microphone to our Parks and Recreation Director, Marissa Garcia, but she is there, so congratulations to her and her team. So that's really helping get this project going. So we'll start the planning of the design build procurement in the coming fiscal year. Yeah, rolling along, we got a few parks and recreation projects here. Olive Park Ball Field shade structure. That'll be a cantilever bleacher shade structure at Olive Park Ball Field Diamonds 1, 2, and 4. And these types of projects are always permitted and plan checked by our building official and his staff. And we're looking to have the shade structure installed in the coming fiscal year. We have a park playground replacement at Maple Street Park. And we are going to do this by design build, and this should all be done next fiscal year with Fund 534. And actually the next two are similar. So we have Brace Canyon Park, playground replacement. We will, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Garcia, we can correct this sheet because we're showing 24-25 funds now. Did you want to chat about this one at all from a funding perspective? I think we got to fix this one, which we can do next month.
No, good evening, Chair Coronado and board members. Marissa Garcia, Parks and Recreation Director. No, certainly, as Mr. Berkman mentioned, we are looking to replace 3 park playground in this coming year. Just briefly, we look to replace our playgrounds every approximately 10 years is our average. These are, well, we've gone past that. Maple Street is a smaller park playground. Brace is larger. And next you'll see McCambridge Park. And we're looking to do those on a design build, as a design build project. If I may move on to McCambridge, because I'm excited. We talk about just different funding sources. With McCambridge, we are seeking to utilize Measure A dollars, which are county funds. They're earmarked funding for Burbank. We still have to apply But there is extensive community engagement process that we will be initiating that this spring. So we are looking to not only replace what's currently there, but we're actually looking to expand our current footprint at the McCambridge Park, as well as really enhancing our that playground, making it much more accessible in terms of the ADA. So that park playground is, we're estimating it to be just under $2 million, and we're looking to utilize Measure A funding in the amount of about $900,000.
Put you on the spot. Thank you very much.
Can I jump in with a question on the playground replacements? What happens to the existing playground equipment that's removed?
That is disposed of. It's removed by our contractor and it's disposed of through that process.
Is there any secondary market for used playground equipment or any donation opportunities or something that would be other than disposal?
I'm not aware of that. I will tell you that our park equipment is heavily used. And as I mentioned, we look at about a 10-year replacement schedule. And the reason why it's replaced about every 10 years is, you know, the play equipment market, the manufacturers, there's always something new and something different just to engage the kids. And so at about the 10 years, one safety, safety, you know, there's changes in regulations, right? And then also replacement parts are much more difficult to find. So in terms of, I'm sure there might be some organizations or nonprofits that might be okay taking that. I don't know in terms of liability. I'm certainly happy to look into that, but I don't know if there might be some liability issues if we, the city, were to donate that equipment. If there's some other liability issues that would be associated with that. I would imagine so, but we have not donated any of our equipment to an organization. I don't know if Mr. Berkman has.
Board Member Schaumerger, thanks for the question. I think the number one thing to know is it has to be disposed of in compliance with our state laws on either reuse, recycling, or disposal. I believe the specs are written that it is the contractor's responsibility to do so, and they potentially, you know, even though these are at certainly end of life or beyond end of life equipment, and what value the materials have is up to the contractor. So it's their contractual responsibility to remove it, and what they do with it just has to be in compliance with law. Maybe they themselves recycle it or they dispose of it in other ways.
Thank you. I just wonder if there might be some good Samaritan exceptions to the liability risks for donations to people who could reuse it, if safe enough. Thank you for considering.
Okay, our last new project, the First Street Pocket Park, is part of a development agreement with the developer over there at First Street, who's contributing about $80,000 to this project. And then we have other fees that you see, our park development fees and development impact fees that will fund this. And this will be constructed kind of in the back of that First Street development. And that's underway right now. I'm not sure of an actual schedule, but they're probably a year away at least, I'm thinking. So yeah, we'll call it like that. So we'll keep you updated on that one. So for the new projects, you can see at the bottom, oh, don't leave that. The total fiscal year for our new projects is a little over 20 million, of which about 8.5 million are from our Municipal Infrastructure Fund, Fund 534. So now we can continue on to our ongoing sheets. So 23 projects that are ongoing and are requiring additional funding to keep going, starting with our Main Street Elm Avenue intersection improvement. And this is going to create a pedestrian equestrian crossing with warnings and signal lights, what's called an RFFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacons at Elm and Main. And we're also going to have ADA ramps and additional street lighting. And our design has been funded through Measure R. And our sheet says design, we're pretty close. We're going to be finishing that in March next month, and we'll look to start construction in the summer, around August. The broadly titled Interstate 5 Arterial Phase 3 is actually a project that's going to reconstruct 4 of our 8 signals that were part of the Alameda Signal Sync project, which are Victory Boulevard and Elmwood Avenue, Magnolia and Reese, Magnolia and Mariposa, and Magnolia and Screenland. It's a 100% Measure R funded project, and our design is complete, and we're going to start procuring the materials this coming June and get to work on construction around July of 25. So that said, we see the funding in 24-25. July 25 would of course be 25-26, so we will keep the sheet like this now, but we'll be modifying it as we get closer. Our First Street Bike Lane is a project that's going to design and construct a little under a mile of protected Class 4 bikeways, bikeway on North First Street from North San Fernando to East Verdugo. And we're also going to have closing access at Bonniewood Place from the intersection of Olive and First to improve pedestrian safety for those who are coming to and from downtown Burbank at the also the Metrolink station. The one correction on this sheet that we will provide for you next month, we do not need 100,000 of the Fund 534, the Municipal Infrastructure Fund, as shown in 24-25. We have that in our prior years, so we will eliminate that. So that's 100,000 back in the pot. We're finishing up design, and we expect to get to construction in September to November of this year. One thing for the board to consider, you know, when we look at these protected bikeway projects, they are protected because they're raised, and that does not allow us to just have a street sweeper come from the street and sweep them. So there's going to be hand sweeping for now, and then we are certainly looking at the smaller sweepers because we're getting more and more lanes of these. We have our Complete Our Streets plan. We have our master bicycle bike path plan. So these are going to trigger more maintenance requirements. So we're working with our CDD transportation planner to make sure we program these and also consider the operation and maintenance needs down the road.
Could we have a sweeper on a bike? Have some device and have someone bike up and down?
Not an outrageous suggestion because, you know, when you think out of the box, if you have somebody going down the bike path with something in front, then maybe that could work. The interesting thing, you know, I can go down a rabbit hole a little bit here. You know, when we go to the conferences and we see the vendors with their EVs, their electronic sweepers, and they do have ones that are adjustable, say from, you know, 5 feet to 12 feet, thinking about this. The interesting thing is they don't have enough battery power to actually, you know, get around your city and do a full days of sweeping. So we'd have to put them, you know, in another vehicle on a trailer and get them to that point and then get them back. So we're very closely watching the technology and the costs. But who knows, maybe there will be a laborer that we hire that gets some exercise and takes care of the bike path too. So we'll figure that out, David. The Rancho Providencia Neighborhood Protection Plan has been in existence for a while, and that's bounded by Buena Vista Street, Olive Avenue, Victory Boulevard, Main Street, and Alameda Avenue. And most recently, in June of '21, council directed staff to commence an update to that NPP in that residential neighborhood. So we've done that and completed a study and a recommended installation of speed humps in 15 locations, and possible, we're still watching this, to make the temporary closure at Orchard Drive and Olive Avenue permanent with curb and gutter, but that still is to be determined, and we're still waiting to have those final results of that data. But we do show the development impact fees coming through 25, 26 for now. CSB, where we are, Community Services Building, security enhancements, that's pretty much done with design. And this is going to increase our security, basically close our elevator and stairway here to the general public during regular business hours, and also upgrade, if you know the floor here, have the 4 half doors become full height doors for additional security for the staff down on this first floor where most of the general public comes in. So we are working a little bit on the logistics of what we're going to do once this is all in place, but we expect to get that going for construction in the coming fall. The Orange Grove parking structure restoration and repairs. This project has been on the books for a while. The latest 1.5 years, we were kind of seeing what Tesla was going to do because they were interested in constructing some EV infrastructure. So we were figuring out which way we were going to go and when with that. That has gone away, so that's not happening. So now we're going to be able to move forward with what is a exterior plaster, repairing the stairs and paint the entire structure. And there was a lot of escalation from the time this was started, August 2018, and most recently, 10% construction escalation added for the past year or so, where we have this budget request in here for about $383,000. We're finalizing our contract documents, the plan, specs, and estimates, and we expect to get this going in October 2024 and finish it next fiscal year. This is a fun one. We have the City Hall fountain restoration and modernization. Now, what we did, we had Burbank Water and Power. Once the the drought mandate was put into place that no non-functional turf can be watered with domestic water, we put a recycled water line in extension from Orange Grove over to 3rd by City Hall, so we can not only water the lawn, but we can't use our fountains with domestic water. So with the recycled water line there, it's a long overdue restoration to the City Hall fountain, which was last done in 1998, so that's over 25 years ago. So that's why it's been not operable with water. But when we look at the guts, if you will, that's below City Hall, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, that not only needs to be completely replaced, but also very specifically has to be able to serve recycled water, very different chemically type of water. So we're looking to get that done. We should be in design, Dean, and when do you think design would be done now? About May? Is that what we're looking? So we really want to push for this project and get design done so we could start construction in the summer. This is a positive operation and maintenance impact, because with all the new equipment, it'll be certainly more efficient and cut down on our operation and maintenance costs. The exhaust systems modernization project, there's a specialized ventilation equipment that collects and expels diesel fumes, carbon monoxide, and other particulates and other harmful airborne particles in our fire stations, and also our vehicle maintenance bays in public works at the city yard. So this project, we have a grant that is expiring at the end of this calendar year, but we know we can extend it. So we have $200,000 programmed here to get started in construction on this in August. The fire station kitchen modernization, it's really an industrial grade kitchen for the firefighters at Fire Station 11, the headquarters across the street. And that's basically in really, really bad shape and needs a complete upgrade, and also to be upgraded to meet current ADA rules and regulations. So we're going to start design this coming spring, in the coming months, and we expect to have a permit submitted to building officials' office in summer and continue on through construction to get it done in fall of 2025. And like the fountain, O&M should really be reduced as a great benefit, side benefit to that in the long term. The Foy Park area light and lighting modernization, pretty self-explanatory. We got design taking place now, and we expect construction to be coming in the coming fiscal year. Fire stations 12 and 16 need fuel tank replacement project. There's two underground 1,000-gallon unleaded gas and diesel tanks that need to be replaced. The fire department actually even red tagged them in July 21, so they have to go to other stations or travel to get their equipment refueled. So we need to get that going this summer, which we expect to finish that in February. The PD fire headquarters across the street, again, that needs a significant subterranean waterproofing and restoration project for the planters that are there, as well as the parking areas. This is really a complex project with deep excavations, so it's going to be phased over the next several years. So we're finishing up our design, and we want to start construction in August of 2025. At the Public Works Yard, our vehicle lift equipment modernization, we have 14 of them that we are trying to do 2 lifts per year. We are, I think, Dean, do you know the current design status? I think we need to update that, but we definitely want to start construction in the coming fiscal year, and you see this is a multi-year project for us to get to all 14 of those. Excuse me. A big project that you know about from last month, the new Burbank Central Library and Civic Center. We're in phase 3, finishing technical studies and further defining the project to look to seek a design build consortium, possibly a public-private partnership, a P3. So we're looking to get to the RFQ, request for qualifications, request for proposal documents. So we're finishing up on alternative analyses and financial analyses and varying site plans. So that's in development. This is where in 26-27 you see the Building Forward Library Improvement Grant of $10 million, and in the same year, 26-27, the city's match that council dedicated of $10 million. So this project, very exciting for us to build a new library pretty much here on this block that we are on, and look forward to keeping you all updated on progress on that.
question on the unfunded line, where you have 100 million unfunded in 27, 28, and 28, 29. Are there plans to obtain that funding, or is that just, I mean, is that part of the 3P, public-private partnership plans?
So I'll start that, and Ms. Becker can continue if I'm missing anything. But there are multiple ideas, including the P3 folks that the concessionaire team that could fund that. There could be an opportunity, not just with this project, but with other major projects for bond issuance. But everything is in play right now. But as we are really finalizing the ideas and the budget, and we get to that point, it's going to be a much more poignant discussion of, okay, what do we want to do to fund this?
I think Mr. Berkman pretty well covered it. I'll just add that for us to know what the best methodology of funding these future projects is, the first step is to really identify how much is unfunded. So it's important to sort of plug those unfunded amounts in there so we know how much we need to bring these projects to fruition, and that can help us make decisions on the best course of action to, secure that funding.
Thank you.
The police fire headquarters, again, that's Fire Station 11 and across the street. We finished the first phase of flooring, and then we are continuing this year with this phase. Looking for pretty much starting up soon. Do we have a start date on that, Anna, yet? On phase 2? So we show March. So good. We're on looking to start that up next month and finish that phase 2 for July, and then we will plan on phase 3. So our this is one of the 5-year projects that we have, as you see, for storm drain, pump station, and our catch basin upgrades. So it's really to implement capital improvements for our storm drain, pump stations, and the gravity facilities, that's catch basins and connector pipes and their facilities. So that is, we saw in 2023-24, we made emergency repairs to a 42-inch corrugated metal pipe, CMP, storm drain, and inlets along at 5 West Magnolia. So 115,000 of this was requested is requested 24-25 to replenish those funds. So this is an ongoing project that Mr. Walker, who you saw on his team, takes care of every year. And you remember, this is an exciting
Mr.
project.
Berkman?
Oh, yeah,
I'm
sure.
sorry to interrupt. Just a question on the storm drain project. So it looks like the budget over the next 5 years is $95,000 a year. So that's obviously the same number every year. Wouldn't we anticipate increases, or that's basically an earmark?
So I will start the answer, and Mr. Walker, I'll turn around if you wanted to add anything. But it is basically an earmark based on the known projects that we have out there and kind of our master plan that we know we have to do. And we have $95,000 worth of design and construction work anticipated. But each year, we take a closer look at the following year and see what is needed. I mean, we see this year we're with taking the 115,000 out of that. We have that same kind of number here. So it's anticipated work that could be lower or higher as we get closer. Mr. Walker, did you have anything to add?
No, it may vary slightly year to year. Oh, I'm okay.
No, you have to. It's on record.
Oh, okay. On record. Well, let's say that again. It may vary slightly year to year, but that's why it's part a 5-year program. So there could be a little bit of carryover from year to year. We have multiple storm drain catch basins. We have multiple storm drain pump stations that we work on. We also do repairs on catch basins as well. Some of it's emergency work. You can't predict that. It does vary to some extent year to year.
Thank you.
All right, so the McCambridge Park Stormwater Capture Multi-Benefit Project, I think we discussed this last month, but this is exciting. Pursuing a project to improve stormwater quality and capture, more importantly, create bioswales in our parking lots at the park, improve ADA paths, picnic tables with shade structures, fitness stations, a 9-hole disc golf course, improved lighting throughout the park. So we have the preliminary design we started, went after a grant. We finished outside the competitive funding rankings, but these funds that additional for design, we're going to continue and refine that design, make it more competitive so we can resubmit for grant funds from the county and other sources and really get some major funding for what is as you see, a very large, impactful project.
And just a question for clarity about that project. So as stormwater capture, it looks like the improvements all are intended to retain the water on that site, as opposed to, obviously, we don't own our groundwater, we don't have a reservoir for reclaimed water, so that it's all on site. Is my understanding that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's on site. The largest component would be an infiltration gallery, which would be under the southerly portion of the park where there's that large grass area, if you're familiar with the park. So we would excavate down quite a number of feet, and that's one of the things that we're asking for funding for so that we can refine the design, because right now the design is only based on a feasibility analysis that we were able to obtain special funding from the county for under Measure W. So that was a positive thing. We didn't have to utilize city funding for that. We got county funding for the feasibility analysis. As Mr. Berkman mentioned, we finished just outside the funding for our design. They funded the first 6 projects, and we came in number 8. So they told us one of the concerns that they had was a high construction cost, and so we're going to refine the design, and that's why we're asking for funding, and we're going to go back out and apply for multiple grants to fund primarily the construction. So at that point, we could get some design funding, or we may fund all of the design in-house, with city return on the municipal funding, and then essentially have a shovel-ready project that would be highly competitive for grant funding for construction.
Thank you.
So this next one is one of the last 6 of our ongoing projects, all from Parks and Rec. And the Dick Clark Dog Park is 100% design is just about complete. We're looking to have an additional informational community meeting take place in early 2024. I don't know if that's happened yet.
We have our 2 community meetings. First one, March 2nd, in this room from 10 to 11. Second one, March 6th. It's a virtual meeting, Wednesday from 6 to 7.
Thank you. We didn't even practice that. I just threw that out there. So that's a cool project that we're looking to go forward with. The Bell Golf Course has received some great improvements from this project and continues this year with more improvements to the bunkers and the cart paths. The Verdugo Recreation Center basketball side backboards replacement with adjustable backboards, that's been in progress, and we're going to complete that this fiscal year. Ball field lighting modernization at Schaefer Ball Field. And looking to do this by design build, and construction will occur in the next fiscal year. One of our larger Parks and Rec projects, the George Isay Park Master Plan, is a multi-phase project that will ultimately result in the renovation of the park. We are looking for landscape improvements, parking and pedestrian walkway improvements, renovations to the Olive Rec Center and Burbank Little Theater, and a bunch of other improvements. The Phase 3 right now is going to consist of further design developments at the Burbank Little Theater, the Olive Rec Center, and amenities. So that phase is the one that's going to be starting in this coming fiscal year. And lastly, the Valley Park shade structures with a new project name, self-explanatory really, at the Valley Park Ball Field. And we're looking to do that in this coming fiscal year. Noting that as opposed to shade fabric, which has a life of about a decade, these shade structures have a useful life of 25 years.
Question on some of these Parks and Rec projects. Has there been any consideration about having donors contribute a significant amount so they could have their name on the shade structure or on, some part of the covering at Johnny Carson, or, in other words, if someone gave a significant amount of money, would there be naming rights, or is that something the city does or doesn't do?
That's a really great question. We have done that on a limited basis. We actually are currently working on our on the city's facility naming ordinance. We have done that. So, for example, previously, one of the new projects is at Olive Park, ball field number 3. There's already a shade structure there, and that was a donation by Gary Marshall, the director. We also, with the dog park, there's a donation to Clark. So we've done it on a very limited basis, but not, we don't have a program. And part of that is because our ordinance does not have a formal process. So we've done it on a one-off basis because individuals have approached the city. But we have worked with our park board and have some thoughts that we need to really solidify through our staff, city staff, and then take it to the city council. But absolutely, there are a lot of opportunities, especially here in Burbank, where we can take advantage of, the generosity of individuals who want to either anonymously or have their name on something for naming rights.
Or even corporations.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, thank you. Madam Chair, we usually only have to do this once a year, but we have a procedure that a couple of years ago we established. We have a 90-minute check-in to make sure everybody would like to continue with the meeting, so I'll put that out there for the board.
Do we have to take a vote on that, or it's just a consensus?
I think it could be a consensus, just yes would be fine. Or any objections to continuing, I guess.
Seeing none, moving on.
Great, thank you. Next one's at 8:30. We won't be here that long. We'll be going. Okay. So as I mentioned, for the first time, I wanted to show the board and the public our continued projects list, because we're always so focused on the new and ongoing because that's where the funding requests are. But there's a tremendous amount of work going on, and wanted to run through those projects that total about $72 million. So first we have the title of 2244 North Buena Vista Facility Improvements. That's a facility where Home Again LA is going to be moving into, and Community Development and Public Works and Purchasing are coordinating on this project. Looking to have a designer on board pretty soon in the coming months and complete that improvement in November 2025. The Starfighter, the F-104D Starfighter aircraft that you see over there on Olive, we're drafting those plans, and that's something that we're looking to start construction in August of '24. The next few upcoming.
Mr. Brooks.
Oh, yes, sure, sorry.
Are we following anywhere on, like, do we have these materials?
These are the project sheets, and you do
Oh,
have
they're
those.
the individual
Yeah,
sheets?
what is on the screen there is what you have in front of you.
Okay.
So if you want me to slow down or go
No,
back,
no,
please,
I
please
just
let me
wanted to
know.
make sure I'm tracking. Thank you.
Okay. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, here's our annual project. So first, our arterial pavement for 2022, 23. And we'll be doing, design is done, and construction on this one, this is going to be going to construction in the summer, and this is for Victory Boulevard from Providencia Avenue to the city limits, and Alameda Avenue from Lima to California streets. Next. Our residential pavement program for 22-23. This is the project that's currently under construction and that you see out there. The 22-23 annual sidewalk restoration. We opened bids on February 6th, and I know we have it slated for council approval of a contract award in March. In March, thank you. The 23-24 annual arterial, we have design occurring now through July, and we expect construction to occur December to February, December 24 to February 25. The 23-24 sidewalk rehab is currently in design. Oh, sorry, let me catch up. The residential pavement rehabilitation. That's the sheet that's up there. And if I don't have my glasses on, I can't see it. Yeah, thank you. That's at 60% design completion, and we're looking to complete that project by December of this year. Now our sidewalk for 23-24, we're just starting design, so we're just getting that going. Bridge repairs is a project that it's really a partnership with the county. We have funds that we keep for any emergencies, but also to assist the county who do maintenance on our bridges. And the last example of when we use this, I believe, was about a year ago when a car crashed into the railing on Olive Avenue Bridge close to First, and the county came out and fixed that for us, and I think we contributed a portion of that repair. Next, very interesting project that I mentioned, the Olive and Magnolia Bridge pedestrian safety improvements, really the railing upgrade that we're talking about. We're working with our consultant and we're setting up a few options for those railings, and that's something that we would bring to the IOB to take a look at as we get the actual options before us. Yes?
For this project, $400,000 is enough to complete the construction?
No, thank you for the question. That is our design funding. So when you see below at the bottom the expenditures, we have specific rows for design, construction, and inspection. So right now we're finishing up our design, and actually I'm going to talk to Mr. Megardician because I'm not the PM. He is, but more importantly, we actually had a contract awarded at about $450,000, so we have to update that. And with that, we're going to be able to see what our cost estimate, when we first created this project a few fiscal years ago, was really a council request, and we estimated like $2 million to do both Magnolia and Olive Bridges, the railings. So once we get our designs done and see the kind of what I call the good, better, best railing fencing upgrades, then that's an example of, again, looking to go after, federal or state grants for the construction. So that's why we're only showing that. I would expect by this time next year, we will be able to show the actual prior year's expenditure for design, finishing that up, and showing what we need for construction, and hopefully with a grant funding as well.
Okay. I believe, if I remember correctly, there was a discussion also to maybe have this part of also BRT project for Metro to take care of some of the bridges.
This part is completely on us, the railings. And one of the interesting things that we wanted to make sure in design that we put out in the RFP for designers was we want to be able to have these fencing, be a little more decorative but removable. So if we widen the bridge or do work on it, we can use it again. But the BRT project, kind of a separate conversation, but we're definitely in talks with Metro to work with them to widen or even maybe replace Olive Bridge to ensure that there's an actual stop with an elevator over, they're saying it's a regional BRT bus line. It's going over our most heavily traveled regional rail line for us. Well, it doesn't make sense not to have a stop there because the stop is still all the way down by Lake. So we are in conversations with that bigger project for sure. The First Street Village sound wall is something that's in process, and we're talking with Caltrans, so that's always a long conversation, I'll say, but this project is something we're trying to do. The title of seismic retrofit and renovation, this right now is really for the Gross Park exercise building and some ADA upgrade improvements. We are waiting for the Maxim restroom and building project to be done. That impacts the child care, so we need Maxim to be done so we can have child care there and move on to working on the Gross Park project. CYSB, or the City Yard Services Building, is a big project that's been around for a number of years that we're excited to almost be at the finish line to get to construction. So we're almost there. We'd expect to advertise in the coming months. I would, not April 2024, I'd probably be looking at June, but definitely looking for construction coming September, summer, fall.
Question, excuse me.
Yeah.
For the project, do you estimate that we won't need additional funds for construction?
No, we don't. We've been upgrading our estimates each and every year. We do think we have enough, and with a construction manager at risk, a GMP, we would have cost certainty, and then we'll be able to see what, if any, additional funding we need. But we think right now we're on target. Another long-standing project, the Burbank, the Metrolink station waterproofing and elevator modernization. So we have bids, and we came in just 10% over the engineer's estimate, which is good in this inflationary environment. So we're going to City Council next month to get that contract going. The fuel systems modernization is something we're looking to advertise soon. And this is, hopefully construction is going to occur from July through October. In PD, the jail door control system modernization, our technical plans and specs were completed. We're finalizing the full bid documents, so we're hoping to advertise for that in May and get construction going some months after that. Not the pool replacement, but McCambridge Park pool repair. This project is ongoing right now, so we are going to have that done so we can open in mid-May, certainly before Memorial Day, so we get our pool season going with a much improved pool and equipment system. The PD Fire Headquarters video surveillance management system. This is a storage project, so it's just adding servers, and we're looking to procure these materials. And Mr. Pearson, what's our latest on this? Are we expecting a date of shipment for our materials right now?
Yes, we're refining the estimate for the work. It looks like we can
Here.
not bid that.
Nice. Yeah. Press the button. Yeah, green.
The final quote is.
Press the, so it's green. Press the button. Just press it. And let go. Yeah. Go ahead.
So we are updating the final estimate. We are updating the final estimate for the project.
It's like connecting to your Bluetooth. It's flashing now. So here, use that one.
Oh, perfect. So
Test.
a construction estimate is being finalized now. It looks like we have the okay to skip a formal bid process to procure the materials for the project. And we expect to have a PO for this work in approximately 6 weeks.
All right. Thank you.
Just a general question, Mr. Berkman. The PO process and the bid, what's the cap, what's the limit without going out to a public bid for your projects?
Can you be more specific?
Like, do you have a certain dollar amount that you can just do through an administrative process without going to full-blown public advertisement for a project?
Oh, sure. There's so many procurement rules and regulations, but the answer to your question, for a public works project, we have to go to council for projects of dollar values of 200,000 and greater. There's always a procurement process and bidding process depending on the value as we move through from, I think it's 5,000 up to and through the 200,000. So there's different types of procurement strategies and regulations that we follow for all of our projects.
Is this the same for the professional services?
Professional services, I have signatory authority of $100,000, and anything, I forget, is it anything above that, Ms. Becker, that we have to go to council?
Yes, I'm happy to speak to that.
Yeah, thanks.
So for any citywide purchase, $10,000 is our minimum threshold before you would need to do some sort of competitive process. There are various different types of competitive processes, but administratively, specifically for professional services agreements, like Mr. Berkman mentioned, he can sign off on contracts up to $100,000. Anything above that needs to be approved by the city council.
All right, thank you for the question. Our PD Fire headquarter roof and structure waterproofing, really the roof project, that's coming up. We should be opening bids shortly in April, get that work going. What's titled as roof repair, restoration of multiple roofs. Similarly, as I said, that's one of those projects we're not naming so generally, but there's actually specific parks roofs that are going to be done with this: Olive Rec Center, Jocelyn Adult Center, Creative Arts Center, the Pottery Building, the Animal Shelter, and the Water Reclamation Administration Building. And Dean, we haven't opened bids on this yet, but that should be within a month or two, within a month, right? So we'll be opening bids for this in about a month. Our downtown San Fernando Boulevard reconfiguration. That's something that we talked about with a one-way configuration as a pilot program, and we're going to be doing that transition in the first weekend in March. The I-5 mitigation measure for Empire Interchange, the goal is to advertise in the coming month and go to council for award in May of 2024 and start that project. The only reason the City Hall turf watering is on the books, it's for that recycled water line, which is done, so BWP does the work, and basically as a customer, we pay for it, but they still have, Public Works, we're holding them and their contractor to finish up the striping on 3rd Street there, so they'll get their money when they're done with that. Chandler Bikeway. So interesting project. We're estimating design to be completed late in this calendar year, construction to start December 25, a large project, looking to finish this toward the end of 2028. The Oliver Dugo intersection improvements, I think everybody knows this intersection. We're looking to return to council probably towards in the summer, mid-2024, to request approval of a revised design alternative. We are actively working on planning and designing this project, so we'll stay tuned with that with Mr. Kriski. The San Fernando Bikeway, all the necessary agreements have been approved, and in essence, we have 90% plans complete for the southern half, and our northern half of this project is at about 60%. And this is a real interesting, it's a Class 1 bike path constructed along the San Fernando Boulevard and Victory Place between Cohasset and Empire along the Burbank Western Channel between Cypress and the downtown Metrolink station. This connects to the one we did pretty much just as I got here in spring of 2020. So really interesting. It completes the final 3 miles of a 12-mile regional bike path. The Bryce Canyon Park ball field, our plans are 100% complete. We're doing an environmental review right now in anticipation of having a recommendation to the City Council as to whether we're going to use artificial turf or stay with the natural grass. Then a couple of irrigation projects, one at DeBell, continuing that work, and then also at McCambridge. And DeBell and McCambridge, both designs are complete. For DeBell irrigation for holes 1 to 6 and 8 to 9 will be replaced in the coming fiscal year. And for McCambridge, they're working on an RFP to get that going with purchasing. The McCambridge Park picnic facility improvements. The equipment order was placed and installation is estimated to be completed in May. For Santa Anita, similar project, looking to do that actually in design build and looking to do the design build in this current fiscal year. And Ms. Garcia, do you know if that's accurate? We should be done by this June, it looks like. If not, we could check back with you. All right, so then we have Foy Park irrigation and Maxim Park irrigation. Both of those projects are in design, and construction will take place in the coming fiscal year. The Johnny Carson Park shade structure is something that is kind of a call for artist project, and we're looking for installation to be in fiscal year 2024-25, completing in summer of 2025. Bless you.
Mr. Berkman?
Yes, sir.
Quick question. Going back to the Brace Canyon turf project.
Sure.
I see that you guys were considering current turf versus artificial turf. Has there been any update there on which direction you're going to be going?
Ms. Garcia?
Good evening. No, we still owe, still finalizing the environmental study, so that environmental study will be presented to our park board, Sustainable Burbank Commission, and then will be presented to the City Council for ultimate decision on which direction we go in.
Has there been pushback on the artificial turf? by
Yes,
the
there
community?
has. Yes. So just really quick background. City Council had previously approved artificial turf, approved the contract, hence why the project has been designed, fully designed for artificial turf. And that's when we got some community, more community engagement and pushback, right? And concerns about artificial, rightly so. And so at that point, we did not move forward with the going out to bid or anything. We engaged a consultant who is doing a top to bottom environmental assessment, and will be presenting that, and did some community, more extensive community engagement, worked with our stakeholders, and will be presenting that report to the respective boards that are involved, and again, to the City Council to make that decision.
And is the rubberized track connected to the artificial turf? Or is it possible that you would do the natural turf but do the rubberized track?
I'm sure anything is possible. I would guess to say that the community who is opposed to the artificial turf is probably opposed to the rubberized track, would be my guess, because it's similar arguments. I'm just guessing, but certainly all that information I'm sure will come out through those reports. And again, those meetings are similar to IOB, right? They're noticed meetings, open meetings, and we'll get some community feedback during those meetings.
Thank you.
Sure. And I, through Ms. Berkman, I'm happy to, once that report is finalized, make this board aware of that, should you want to review that or attend or view one of those meetings.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Garcia, all right, the last two. Glen Oaks Boulevard and First Street Signal, a big project. You'll notice all with Measure R money to improve 13 signals along Glen Oaks and 1 signal at First Street to help out with our anything from complete streets and maximizing pedestrian and bicycle safety. So exciting project that is under construction now. And then our Victory Boulevard signal synchronization project, data collection, analysis, design will be done in October, and we would seek to implement those recommendations of the design and upgrades to complete in March of 2025. So that concludes the entire presentation. And again, thanks to everyone, staff, and for preparing all this and all the hard work that you've done and your time and attention. We're all happy to answer any other questions you may have.
I have two general questions. We have all these very important projects before us, and in regard to staffing those projects, are there any concerns about having adequate staffing for these ongoing projects? In reviewing them, you can see that so many of them are needed because of the result of the city the failure to maintain the infrastructure over the decades. That probably was due to lack of funding and lack of staffing as well. Are we able to review future staffing so that proper and needed maintenance will be available in the decades to come? That way we can avoid all these major rehab projects, which appears to be our main concern and challenge at this time.
Yeah, through the chair, Board Member Besson, it's an excellent question, and it's the very first thing that I thought of walking through the door when I started in April 2020, and we have, as a team, have always been talking about this up to and through the city manager. So there are many different things that we have to consider when, just like any other city preparing our capital program. And as you mentioned, it's not just the financial, but what staff resources do we need? And we are always every year looking at the short-term, long-term staffing resources that we have and what we need. So ultimately, our customers, the community at large, has demands and makes requests, and we know those and we log those as departments. That's part of our every December we think about what projects we need. But with our master plans, they often guide everything that we do, from bicycles to our roads and like this building master plan that we're looking to do. We have to make sure, and there's always some tough choices. This year, as you can see, it's a little easier, but we have certainly in the past dug ourselves a hole with the backlog that we've created. I wasn't here, but you're probably right. Probably a lack of funding. You can't do work without funding, but you also can't do work without the people to do it. And speaking of that, the past couple of years, actually not until 8 months ago, I'd say, it's been really hard for us to staff up with recruiting because it's been so ultra competitive with the low unemployment rate, especially with planners and engineers and anybody involved in the construction industry. Really, with the state mandates of all the housing that has to be built, we're competing for the same resources in limited availability. The private sector can really just be, here's a check, come work for us. And that's tough for us to compete with. Our HR, Management Services Department, does a great job with the resources, not so ironically that they sometimes are short of, competing for the same people who need to hire and recruit, of getting us the people. And then up to and including in our budget process, this group is part of the budget process. One part is that capital program, but across the board for all the resources, council has been very supportive, and our city manager of our requests for new staff. And you could tell that we have been staffing up. You see that in a few projects of we need to reconfigure some offices and move some space around to get people on board. Mr. Walker's team, with all the development and the ADUs, they have a lot of plan checking to do, just like any other of the building-related departments and divisions. We have, 4 cubicles in a space that we're just going to get built in the coming month also for additional positions, along with engineers that we've gotten. So that is the long way to say, yes, it's always on our minds. It's very tough to deal with, but I think we're getting better and better every year, and we have to get rid of that backlog. And that's why it's, we appreciate your support and understanding that there's a lot of work to do, and we're going to get it done, and we have to continue to be fiscally responsible while we're doing it, for sure.
On that note, that's actually a good lead into my next question, which is, as we complete these projects, can we use the Fund 534 budget for ongoing maintenance of this infrastructure? So we see over and over things that drastically need repair, but as we repair them, can we use these funds, or is it limited per ordinance to the completion of major projects, such as this list?
Sure, thank you for that question as well. We do have Fund 530 for maintenance purposes as well. In Ms. Becker's presentation, you might remember that I think it was about a $5.2 million number, and that's across all departments. Typically in our budget books, it's called materials, services, and supplies. So all of that funding goes towards our maintenance. It could be, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, anything that is not a capital project. And we definitely use it. Could be asphalt and asphalt repairs, concrete. Those types of things are definitely part of the Fund 534 benefit, and we do use those for maintenance purposes.
Thank you so much.
One question for me. I noticed that there's a McCambridge pool replacement as part of the proposed new projects. Big project, $18 million worth of funding. And there's an ongoing project to repair the pool that's actually not even completed yet. So how do those two go hand in hand?
Sure. Member Codovarian, thank you for the question. They are definitely two distinct projects. So the replacement has been a long planned project, and we know that pool has come upon its usable service life, and that major project has to happen. And to get to that point and keep what is a very valuable asset of pool open, this project is an immediate repair and minor upgrade to get another 5 years out of the existing pool and equipment itself, so we can get to the point as we design the major replacement. So they're definitely like a precursor capital project to get to the major replacement.
As in the replacement wouldn't happen for another 5 or several years, let's say.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Understood. Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, I again want to, do you have one question? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question kind of about methodology and approach on this unutilized prioritization criteria this year. And understanding that it was developed in what you might just, what sounded like arguably leaner times, and we're maybe in slightly more comfortable times now. I'm wondering if there is any exercise done to do at least a pro forma scoring prioritization because I mean, there's particularly seeing how heavily weighted health and safety is on the scoring. Is there any value to kind of a contingency plan if, let's take the state, for example. The state had a really high budget surplus for a while and everything was great, and now the state is in a deficit and things changed really quickly, and what happened, and tax revenues change and the economy changes, and so we don't control that, and we don't control the incoming revenue in the future. We can project it. But I'm just wondering, as you know, companies often do, they'll come through and say, you need to cut your budget X%, and then you need to cut your budget Y%. So what would our contingency plan be if we had a budget downturn in this time horizon? And what would we use to prioritize, you know, to say, well, we haven't bid that one out yet, or how would we decide?
I can go ahead and speak to that since it's more of a budget-related question. Fortunately, we never appropriate more dollars than what we currently have available. So it'd be, except in the case of like a catastrophic event, it would be pretty unusual for us to not be able to afford what we've already budgeted in terms of projects, because that's cash that we already have on hand. Of course, for example, during the pandemic, when since this revenue that this fund receives is sales tax based, we were expecting a pretty significant dip in our revenue. And what we did during that budget year is we decide we were not going to do any new capital projects. We were only going to continue with our basic paving program and our kind of just immediate necessities to keep projects moving or anything that would risk losing funding. So that's sort of how we prioritized at the time. But year by year, we look at our revenues, we project what we think we're going to have, and we only budget projects that can fit within that amount of revenue. So if we see our revenue trending down, we're just going to budget fewer projects in that year. And in that case, our prioritization is going to become a much bigger deal because there are going to be projects above the line and there's going to be projects below the line. This is a very unusual case where we had the available funding for all of the projects that were requested. It's not a typical year, though. Almost always there are some projects that don't make the cut, and occasionally those might get reprioritized for the following year, and sometimes they don't because something else comes up. But it's the good thing about a capital plan is most of the projects are one-time in nature, so you're not committing yourself to this, recurring every year budget. It's not like when we have to make budget cuts within the general fund, which is so staff heavy that it makes it much harder to cut budgets. We're really flexible with our capital spending. And if we were to go from 20 projects one year to 10 projects another year, that's, always a possibility and that's always doable. But we do have to consider that in the future because sales tax is it's a fickle revenue stream, right, based on how the economy is doing. So we can't guarantee that it's going to be the same every year, that it'll continue to grow like we've experienced over the past few years.
If I may add, for the board, considering the hypothetical, if I understand it, if something happened where we suddenly did not have the funds to complete our capital program that we have recommended to council, and let's say council approved and we're moving forward with in the next fiscal year, that is exactly under the purview of this board, what I would expect to have happen, as opposed to when it was just barely in existence. I think this board, when I came here during the pandemic, and as Ms. Becker said, that program, I remember that sheet going from 21 million to like $13 million of projects. We would get together as staff and come up with recommendations and bring, in all likelihood, we would use that scoring methodology sheet and bring that to you and say, here are our recommendations. What do you think of this? Now that we have, instead of 33 million, we have 16 million. We think we should be pursuing these, and here's that red line. Here are the projects that we don't think we should proceed with. What do you think of that? And we would seek your advice so we can provide that advice to the city council in that case.
Thank you, and I appreciate the budget comments. I put another way, and it's a bit of a rhetorical question. The question might be just because we can fund these projects, should we fund all of these projects? Like, would we potentially want to keep another dollar in our reserves, for some things? So it's a rhetorical question, but.
Absolutely. When there's tough economic times, everything's on the table, right? And we have to prioritize as an organization, not just our capital plan, but our overall citywide budget.
I have a question and a comment. Regarding the funded projects on the last part of the presentation, are we anticipating any new funding request for any of those projects for next fiscal year through Measure P?
Are we talking about the continued projects, the last ones? I would answer that as no, because these projects are, in general, at the phase far enough along, final design or in construction, that we don't expect to come back to the board for additional funds.
Thank you. And then just a comment, I think once we started this IOB, there was a discussion always to recommend to the city council for the additional contribution on top of $4.7 million.
Yeah.
to have the city council look into the inflation rate, the construction costs, the cost to implementing our capital improvement plans, to revisit that $4.7 million. I want to just repeat this conversation here, that I think as a board, we have to come up with this decision to have some sort of guidance request through the city council, or how this is possible to do this again every year through this budget process, to have the city council revisit this $4.7 million contribution amount and possibly increase.
Right. And it's a good question for the new members to hear. That was a request by the board that was made during last year's budget process. That request being they desired the 4.7 million commitment of 534 to be raised with, say, an inflationary factor of some sort. We did bring that to the city council, and we did bring that, I believe it was in May during our budget hearings. And our recommendation, the board's recommendation was provided in writing, and we provided that report in our budget presentations, that it was recommended to keep it at 4.7 million, and council did, because it allowed us to have flexibility to have that money go wherever it needed to go. If we saw that our minimum maintenance requirements actually needed that bump to 5 million or more, that allows us, we'd still have the means to do that in our regular budget process. So with so many different factors that can impact that, we did decide, and council ultimately did decide, to keep that at 4.7. So that's where that question came from, and it was answered last budget hearing. I don't know if Ms. Becker, you wanted to add anything to that?
Sure. I think there's two components here. One is what the policy states that should be done, and the other is what the council chooses to do. The 4.7 million is the minimum, right? That's what the policy states that we should contribute to the infrastructure fund to maintain the level of spending that the general fund was doing prior to the passage of Measure P. As a finance professional, I would never recommend that the city council adopts a policy that locks them into more than the minimum requirement, because in times when you do have economic difficulties or we do see a drop in our revenues, you don't want to force their hand to committing these dollars to infrastructure when they might be needed for other things throughout the city, right? The city council is considering all the financial priorities of the city, not just infrastructure. So we have to consider that. But I should note that in any given year, the council may elect to contribute more than the $4.7 million. That's just a minimum, that's just a floor. That doesn't mean that in a given year when we have a big project, and we may see this as bigger projects come online, that we might request that they give a larger one-time cash contribution to the fund. It's just that, from a finance perspective, I wouldn't want to lock them into doing so based on revising the policy, because, we're just living in times where the economy can change on a daily basis, and, I don't want to put them in a position where they would have to violate a policy in one area to keep something funded in another area. So, my job is to provide them with the most flexibility with the resources that we have. So that's why that would be my recommendation. But I think there will come a time in future years where we'll be asking for a big one-time contribution when the right project arises.
So my question is, for the past 5 years, we've been asking for more than $4.7 million on top of 50%?
No, we have not. But we also haven't really had a shortage of funding for the capital projects that we have been able to produce, right? Even if we had more funding, does Mr. Berkman and his team have the resources to do more capital projects in a given year than what the 4.7 provides to us? And we've also, fortunately, seen significant increases in our TUT revenue following the pandemic that we didn't expect, right? We budgeted, or we forecasted, maybe a 2% increase, and what we're seeing is increases closer to between 3 and 5%. So that revenue is continuing to increase, even though the 4.7 stays flat, and that's a much larger percentage of our 534 revenue than that general fund contribution provides.
Thank you.
All right. I want to say I appreciate the discussion tonight, a lot of great questions. I want to tag on what Mr. Berkman said. Thank you to staff for the hard work. Really good to see the report and also to see that the red line is helping us to work on all the projects and not have to put anything below that. It's nice to see we're building in our city and managing health and safety. So moving on to the introduction of additional agenda items. Any suggestions or requests? All right, hearing none. It looks like for future we have special meeting to visit capital improvement project sites and special meeting to visit the Transportation Management Center. Do we have an update on that?
Not at this time, but it is definitely in the forefront of our minds. I think after March would be a good time as we get towards the summer months and get some interesting projects out there going.
All right. This may be the longest meeting on record for our board, but we will move to adjournment. Our next meeting will be Thursday, March 29th at 6 p.m. Look forward to seeing you all then.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.